What if I told you that the pennies sitting quietly in your drawer right now, coins you've probably ignored for years, could actually be hiding real value? Today, we're diving into some of Canada's most overlooked 1-cent coins: the 1986 penny, the 1999 penny, the 2001 penny, and the final era 2011 penny. These aren't just ordinary coins, they each carry stories, mint variations, and hidden details that most people never notice. And here's the exciting part: some of these small differences can turn a simple coin into something collectors are actively searching for. Imagine picking up a 1986 Canadian penny and realizing that depending on its condition or subtle design features, it could be worth far more than 1 cent. Then there's the 1999 penny, a year known among collectors for certain varieties and minting quirks that make it far more interesting than it seems at first glance. Moving forward, the 2001 penny may look common, but specific high-grade versions or unusual strikes can catch serious attention in the coin collecting world. And finally, the 2011 penny, one of the last years before Canada officially phased out the 1-cent coin, holds historical importance that makes it special to collectors across the country. In this video, we're not just showing you coins, we're revealing the truth behind their value, the real details collectors look for, and how you can identify whether your coin is just pocket change or something much more exciting. Every scratch, every shine, every tiny detail matters, and by the end of this video, you'll start seeing these pennies in a completely different way. So stay with us until the very end, because we're going to break down everything in clear, honest terms, no hype, just real information, real value, and real insight into these Canadian coins. You might be just one coin away from an unexpected discovery. The 1986 Canadian 1-cent coin is part of a long-standing tradition in Canada's currency system, where the penny served as the smallest unit of monetary exchange for everyday transactions. This coin was issued during the reign of Queen Elizabeth II, whose portrait appears on the front obverse of the coin. The portrait used on the 1986 penny was designed by Arnold Machin, and it shows a mature image of the Queen wearing the Girls of Great Britain and Ireland tiara. Around the portrait, the inscription reads Elizabeth to DG Regina, which is Latin for Elizabeth II, by the grace of God, Queen. This reflects Canada's constitutional monarchy and its historical ties to the British Crown. On the reverse side of the coin, the design features the maple leaves attached to a single twig, a symbol that strongly represents Canadian identity and natural heritage. This design was created by G.E. Kruger Gray, a well-known artist who contributed to many coin designs across the Commonwealth. The maple leaf has long been associated with Canada, symbolizing unity, peace, and pride, and it has been used on Canadian coins since the early 20th century. The denomination 1 cent and the year 1986 are clearly displayed on this side, making it easy to identify. The coin was produced by the Royal Canadian Mint, which is responsible for manufacturing all of Canada's circulation coins. In 1986, the Mint struck hundreds of millions of these pennies to meet the needs of daily commerce, as cash transactions were still very common at the time. The coin is composed primarily of bronze, with about 98% copper, along with small amounts of tin and zinc. This composition gives the coin its classic reddish tone when new, although over time many of these coins turn brown due to oxidation. Physically, the 1986 penny weighs approximately 0.5 grams and has a diameter of 19.05 millimeters, with a smooth plain edge. These specifications were standard for Canadian pennies of that era, and remain largely unchanged for decades. The coin was designed to be lightweight, durable, and easy to produce in large quantities, which made it practical for everyday use, such as small purchases, change, and pricing. The purpose of creating the 1-cent coin was to facilitate low-value transactions and ensure precise pricing in the economy. At the time, prices for goods and services often ended in cents, and the penny allowed both businesses and consumers to exchange exact amounts without rounding. It played a key role in Canada's retail system, especially before digital payments, and rounding practices became widespread. However, over time, inflation reduced the purchasing power of the penny, making it less practical and more costly to produce than its actual value. By 1986, the penny was already becoming less economically efficient, but it was still widely used and accepted across Canada. Eventually, due to rising production costs and declining usefulness, Canada decided to phase out the 1-cent coin. This decision led to the official discontinuation of the penny in 2012, marking the end of an era in Canadian currency history. As a result, coins like the 1986 penny are now part of Canada's numismatic heritage and are often kept as collectibles or souvenirs. In terms of value, the 1986 Canadian 1-cent coin is generally very common because of its high mintage. Most examples found in circulated condition are worth only a small amount, often sold in bulk rather than individually. However, coins that remain in uncirculated condition, especially those with original red luster and no visible wear, can be more desirable to collectors and may carry a slightly higher value. Exceptionally well-preserved coins, especially those graded by professional services, can sometimes sell for a premium, although they are not considered rare. Overall, the 1986 Canada 1-cent coin represents a piece of everyday history, reflecting a time when small denominations were essential to daily life. It was created for practical economic reasons, designed by notable artists, produced by a respected national mint, and used by millions of Canadians. Today, it stands as a reminder of how currency evolves over time, both in design and in purpose. Going deeper into the details of the 1986 Canadian 1-cent coin, one important aspect is its production quality and strike types. Because even though it is a common coin, not all pieces are exactly the same in appearance or condition. Coins from this year were struck for circulation as well as for collector sets, and the difference between these versions can matter. Circulation coins were made quickly in large numbers, so many of them show weak strikes, small surface marks, or uneven color. In contrast, coins made for collector sets, often called specimen or proof-like coins, were produced with more care, showing sharper details, cleaner surfaces, and a more attractive finish. Another detail is the color classification of copper coins, which collectors take very seriously. The 1986 penny can be found in three main color categories: red, red-brown, and brown. A red coin means it still has most of its original mint luster and bright copper color, which is highly desirable. Red-brown shows partial fading, while brown coins have fully toned due to oxidation over time. This color difference alone can significantly affect value, even if the coin is otherwise in similar condition. When examining the design closely, small details become important. On the reverse side, the veins in the maple leaves, the sharpness of the leaf edges, and the spacing of the lettering can tell you how well the coin was struck. On the obverse, the fine lines in the queen's hair, the clarity of the tiara, and the smoothness of the fields, the flat background areas, all play a role in determining the coin's grade. High-grade coins will show very crisp details with minimal wear, while circulated coins will appear smoother and less defined. There are also minor mint errors and varieties that can appear in 1986 pennies, although none are extremely famous or highly valuable. These can include small die cracks, thin raised lines caused by worn dies, off-center strikes, or slight doubling in letters or numbers. While most of these errors are minor, they can still attract interest from collectors who specialize in error coins. However, such pieces are not commonly found and usually do not reach very high values unless the error is dramatic. Another technical detail involves how the coin ages over time. Because of its high copper content, the 1986 penny reacts with air and moisture, leading to toning or darkening. Improper storage, such as exposure to humidity or handling with bare hands, can accelerate this process, reducing the coin's visual appeal and value. Collectors often store such coins in protective holders to preserve their original condition. From a historical perspective, The 1986 penny represents a period when physical cash was still dominant in everyday life. Credit cards were not as widespread as today, and digital payments were almost non-existent. This meant coins like the penny were essential for exact pricing. However, even during this time, discussions had already begun about the cost of producing low-denomination coins. Since manufacturing a penny was gradually becoming more expensive relative to its face value. Finally, in today's market, the real importance of the 1986 Canadian 1-cent coin lies more in condition and collector interest rather than rarity. While millions were made, finding one in perfect, untouched condition is much harder than finding a worn example. That's why collectors focus on quality over quantity with this coin. In simple terms, the coin itself is common, but truly high-grade examples are much less common, which creates a small but real difference in value. When this coin was first issued in 1986, its official value was 1 cent, 0.01 Canadian dollar. At that time, it was actively used in daily transactions, and it had real purchasing power for small price differences and exact payments. Today, the value depends completely on the condition of the coin. If the coin is in circulated condition, used, worn, common, its value is usually around 0.01 to 0.05 CAD, which means it is still basically just a normal penny with almost no extra value. If the coin is in better condition, less worn, cleaner, its value can increase to around 0.10 to 50 cents. If the coin is uncirculated, especially with original red shine called red condition, then it can be worth around 1 to 3 Canadian dollars. For high-grade coins, very sharp details, no marks, professionally graded like MS65 or higher, the value can go up to around 10 to 80 CAD. Depending on quality, if the coin has a strong mint error like off-center strike or major defect, then in rare cases it can sell for 50 to 500 Canadian dollars or more. But such coins are uncommon. In simple terms, in 1986 gives worth 1 cent today. Common coin gives still very low value today. Good condition gives a few dollars today. Rare, high grade, error gives can be much higher. The truth is, this coin is very common because millions were made, so most examples are not valuable. The real value only comes from condition, rarity and grade, or unusual mint errors. Another fascinating coin into the spotlight, the 1999 Canadian 1 cent. At first glance, it may look like just another ordinary penny, something you've seen countless times, something you might even ignore without a second thought. But take a closer look, because this coin carries more than just a date, it carries a moment in time, a piece of Canada's late 20th century history, and small details that many people never notice. This is where things start to get interesting, because sometimes the most common-looking coins hide the most surprising stories. The 1999 Canadian 1 cent coin was issued under the reign of Queen Elizabeth II, whose portrait appears on the front of the coin, continuing the long-standing tradition of Canadian currency. The reverse side features the classic maple leaf twig design, a symbol deeply connected to Canada's identity, representing unity, nature, and national pride. By 1999, this design had already become iconic, recognized not just in Canada but around the world. This coin was produced by the Royal Canadian Mint in very large numbers, as pennies were still widely used in everyday transactions at the time. People relied on them for exact change, pricing, and small purchases. The coin itself is made primarily of copper, giving it that warm reddish tone when new. Although many of these coins today have turned darker due to natural aging and oxidation over time. Now here's where the real detail begins. The 1999 penny is generally considered a common coin, but collectors still pay attention to certain factors that can make a difference. Condition plays a huge role. Coins that are worn and used are very common and hold little extra value, but coins that remain in clean, uncirculated condition with original red luster are much more desirable. The sharper the details, the cleaner the surface, and the brighter the color, the more attention the coin gets from collectors. There are also small varieties and minor minting differences. that can appear in 1999 pennies, although most are subtle and require careful observation. Things like slight doubling in letters, die cracks, or unusual strikes can make a coin more interesting, even if they don't always make it extremely valuable for collectors. These small differences are part of the excitement, the idea that two coins from the same year may not be exactly identical. In terms of value, the truth is simple and honest. Most 1999 Canadian pennies in circulated condition are worth only a few cents, often very close to their original value. Coins in better condition may be worth a bit more, and uncirculated examples can reach a few dollars depending on quality. High-grade coins, especially those with strong eye appeal and minimal imperfections, can go higher, but they are not easy to find. What makes the 1999 penny truly special is not just its value, but its place in history. It comes from a time when cash was still dominant, before digital payments took over, and when even the smallest coin played an important role in daily life. Today, with the penny discontinued in Canada, coins like this have become small reminders of the past, simple, quiet pieces of history that many people still hold without realizing their story. So the next time you see a 1999 Canadian 1-cent coin, don't dismiss it too quickly. Look a little closer, because behind that simple design could be a story, a detail, or even a small surprise waiting to be discovered. When this coin was released in 1999, its official value was just 1 cent, 0.01 CAD, and it was used in everyday life for normal transactions like change and small purchases. At that time, it had real spending power. Now here's where things get more interesting. Today, if you have a normal circulated 1999 penny used, worn, common, its value is usually around 0.01 to 0.05 Canadian dollars. That means most coins are still very common and don't carry high value, but when the condition improves, the story changes. If your coin is in nice condition, less wear, cleaner surface, it can reach around 0.10 to 0.50 CAD. Now step into the exciting range. If you have an uncirculated coin with original red shine, the value can jump to around 1 to 5 Canadian dollars, depending on how clean and attractive it is. And here's the real collector's own. If the coin is in high-grade condition, MS65 or higher with sharp details, strong luster, and almost no marks, it can reach around 10 to 100 Canadian dollars, or even more in some cases. These are the coins collectors actually chase. Now the rare and powerful part. If your 1999 penny has a clear mint error like an off-center strike, double strike, or strong die error, then the value can rise dramatically to around 50 to 500 CAD, and in rare standout cases even higher depending on how unique the error is. So in simple but strong terms, in 1999 gives just 1 cent today, common coin gives almost same. Very low value today, good condition gives small increase today, uncirculated gives today high grade or rare error gives strong collector value. The real truth is this: the 1999 penny is not rare by itself, because millions were made, but the right condition or the right error can turn a simple coin into something truly valuable. The 1999 Canadian 1-cent coin is part of the late circulation era of Canadian pennies, and it represents a time when cash transactions were still extremely active in everyday life across Canada. This coin was issued under the authority of Queen Elizabeth II, whose portrait appears on the obverse side, symbolizing Canada's constitutional monarchy and long historical connection with the British Crown. The portrait used follows the standard, mature effigy style seen on Canadian coins of that period, surrounded by the inscription identifying her as Queen of Canada in Latin form. On the reverse side, the coin features the iconic maple leaf twig design created by G.E. Kruger Gray, which has been one of the most recognized symbols on Canadian coinage for decades. This design is not just decorative, it represents national identity, unity, and Canada's natural heritage. The maple leaf has become a global symbol of Canada, and its presence on this penny connects the coin to a deep cultural meaning beyond its small face value. The coin was produced by the Royal Canadian Mint which is responsible for all official Canadian currency production in 1999. The mint struck this penny in extremely large quantities, because at that time the penny was still fully active in circulation and used in nearly every cash transaction. Supermarkets, vending machines, small shops, and daily retail pricing all depended on the penny for exact change, making it an essential part of the monetary system. In terms of physical composition, the 1999 penny is made primarily of copper, giving it its characteristic reddish-brown appearance when new. Over time, exposure to air and handling causes many coins to darken or tone naturally. The coin weighs about 0.5 grams and has a diameter of 19.05 millimeters with a smooth edge, which was standard for Canadian pennies of this era. Now, when we talk about value, the truth is more dynamic than simple face value. At the time of issue, the coin was worth exactly 1 cent, and it had real purchasing power in everyday life. Today, however, its value depends heavily on condition, rarity and grade, and collector demand rather than face value. A normal circulated 1999 penny today still holds a very low value in the market, generally around 0.05 to 0.25 CAD, because millions were produced and most surviving examples are heavily used. However, when the condition improves, the value begins to rise noticeably. Coins in better than average condition can reach around 0.50 to CAD, especially if they retain clearer details and less surface wear. The real jump in value appears when the coin is in uncirculated condition, especially with strong original red luster. These coins can reach around 5 to 25 CAD, depending on how clean, sharp, and visually appealing they are. Collectors place higher value on coins that look almost untouched by time, because they represent preserved mint condition. For high-grade examples, especially those professionally graded at MS65 or higher, the value can increase further to around 25 to 150 CAD, and sometimes even more in strong collector markets where demand is higher. These coins stand out due to sharp details, strong luster, and minimal imperfections, making them desirable in numismatic collections. If the coin contains a noticeable mint error such as off-center striking, die cracks, or unusual doubling, the value can increase significantly. Error coins from 1999 pennies can reach 100 to 500 Canadian dollars, and in rare and dramatic cases, even higher depending on the uniqueness and visibility of the error. Collectors often pay premiums for such unusual minting variations because they are not intentionally produced and are considered rare production anomalies. Overall, the 1999 Canadian 1 cent coin is not rare in itself due to its high mintage, but its value today is completely driven by condition and rarity and quality. It represents the final decades of penny circulation in Canada, before the coin was eventually discontinued in 2012, making it part of a closing chapter in Canadian monetary history. The 2001 Canadian 1 cent coin is another important piece from the final era of Canada's penny circulation, and it reflects a time when small change was still part of everyday financial life. Before digital payments and rounding systems became common, this coin was issued under the authority of Queen Elizabeth II, whose portrait appears on the obverse side, continuing the long tradition of Canadian coinage that reflects the constitutional monarchy system. The portrait design represents stability and continuity in Canada's currency system, and is part of the standard effigy used on Canadian coins during that period. On the reverse side, the coin features the classic maple leaf twig design created by G.E. Kruger Gray, which has remained one of the most iconic symbols in Canadian numismatics. The maple leaves are not just decorative elements, they represent Canada's national identity, natural heritage, and unity. This design had already been used for decades by 2001, making it instantly recognizable to Canadians and collectors around the world. The coin was produced by the Royal Canadian Mint, which is responsible for all official coin production in Canada. In 2001, the mint struck the 1 cent coin in extremely large quantities because pennies were still heavily used in daily cash transactions. At that time, nearly every cash purchase involved small change, and the penny played a crucial role in ensuring exact pricing in the retail economy. Physically, the 2001 penny is made primarily of copper, which gives it its familiar reddish tone. When newly minted, over time, exposure to air, handling, and environmental conditions causes many of these coins to darken or develop a brownish patina. The coin weighs approximately 0.5 grams and has a diameter of 19.05 millimeters with a smooth edge, maintaining the standard specifications used for Canadian pennies for many years. When it comes to value, the 2001 penny follows the same general pattern as other late-era Canadian cents. At the time of issue, its value was exactly 1 cent, and it functioned as real currency in daily transactions. Today, however, its market value depends entirely on condition and collector demand rather than face value. A normal circulated 2001 penny is still very common and usually worth around 0.05 to 0.25 Canadian dollars, since millions were produced and most surviving examples show signs of use. If the coin is in better than average condition with clearer details and less wear, its value can rise slightly to around 0.50 to the CAD. Uncirculated examples, especially those with strong original red luster and minimal marks, are more attractive to collectors and can reach values around 5 to 25 CAD. Depending on overall eye appeal and preservation, coins that look freshly minted even after many years are always more desirable in the collector market for high-grade specimens, particularly those professionally graded at MS65 or above. The value can increase further to around 25 to 100 Canadian dollars or more, depending on market demand and visual quality. These coins stand out due to their sharp detail, strong shine, and lack of visible imperfections. If the 2001 penny contains a noticeable mint error, such as off-center striking, die cracks, or unusual doubling, its value can increase significantly. Error coins are considered rare because they result from production imperfections, and depending on the severity and visibility of the error, such coins can reach 100 to 500 Canadian dollars or higher in specialized collector markets. Overall, the 2001 Canadian 1 cent coin is not rare in general circulation because of its high mintage, but its importance lies in its condition, preservation quality, and any unique minting characteristics. It also represents the final phase of Canada's long history with the penny, which was eventually phased out in 2012, making it a small but meaningful part of Canadian monetary history. The 2001 Canadian 1 cent coin is part of the late stage circulation pennies issued in Canada, a period when the penny was still actively used in daily life but was already slowly becoming less practical due to inflation and changing payment habits. This coin was issued under the authority of Queen Elizabeth II, whose portrait appears on the obverse side. Continuing the long-standing tradition of Canadian coinage under a constitutional monarchy system, the design represents stability in Canada's currency and is one of the most widely recognized effigies used on Canadian coins during the late 20th and early 21st century. On the reverse side, the coin carries the iconic maple leaf twig design created by G.E. Kruger Gray. This design is deeply symbolic, representing Canada's natural identity, unity, and national pride. By 2001, this design had already been in use for many decades, making it a familiar and respected visual element in Canadian numismatics. The simplicity of the design also made it highly practical for mass production. While maintaining strong national symbolism, the coin was minted by the Royal Canadian Mint, which is responsible for producing all official Canadian circulation coins. In 2001, the Mint produced the penny in extremely large quantities because it was still heavily used in everyday transactions. At that time, cash payments were dominant, and the penny was necessary for exact pricing in shops, supermarkets, and general retail activity. Physically, the 2001 penny is composed mainly of copper, giving it a reddish tone when newly minted. Over time, Exposure to air and handling causes many coins to darken into brown or red-brown shades. The coin weighs about 2.5 grams and has a diameter of 19.05 millimeters with a smooth edge, matching the standard specifications used for Canadian pennies of that era. Now coming to the value, the most important truth is that this coin is not rare in terms of mintage, but its value depends heavily on condition, grade, and special characteristics. At the time of issue, its value is exactly 1 cent, 0.01 CAD, and it was actively used in daily economic life. Today, for a normal circulated 2001 penny used in common condition, the value is still very low, usually around 5 cents to 25 cents equivalent, because millions were produced and most examples show signs of wear from circulation. These coins are generally considered bulk collectible items rather than high-value numismatic pieces. If the coin is in better than average condition with clearer details and limited wear, its value can increase to around 50 cents to $3 USD, especially if the coin still retains some visual appeal and cleaner surfaces. When we move into uncirculated condition coins that were never used in daily transactions and still show original mint luster, the value increases more significantly. Such coins can reach around $5 to 25 United States dollars, depending on how strong the shine, red luster, surface quality, and strike sharpness are. Collectors pay more attention to coins that look almost new, even after many years. High-grade examples, especially those professionally graded such as MS65, MS66, or higher, can see stronger demand in the collector market. These coins can reach values around $25 to 150 United States dollars, and in strong collector demand situations even more. The difference in value comes from how well the coin has been preserved and how visually attractive it is compared to others. The most valuable category is error coins. If a 2001 penny has a minting error, such as off-center strike, double strike, die break, or unusual production flaw, the value can increase significantly. Depending on the rarity and visibility of the error, such coins can sell for around $100 to $500 USD, and in exceptional cases with dramatic errors or strong collector demand, even higher. In simple terms, the 2001 Canadian 1-cent coin is not valuable because of rarity, but because of condition and uniqueness. Most coins are common and low value, but a small percentage those in perfect condition or with mint errors can become highly desirable to collectors. Overall, this coin represents the final phase of Canada's long penny history, before the coin was officially discontinued in 2012, making it a small but meaningful piece of modern Canadian numismatic history. The 2011 Canadian 1-cent coin represents one of the final chapters in the long history of the penny in Canada, and it carries a special significance that goes far beyond its simple appearance. By the time this coin was issued, the world was already changing rapidly. Digital payments were growing, cash usage was slowly declining, and the practicality of very small denomination coins like the penny was being questioned more seriously than ever before. Yet, in 2011, the penny was still officially part of daily life, still being used in transactions, still passing from hand to hand across the country. This coin was issued under the authority of Queen Elizabeth II, whose portrait appears on the obverse side. By 2011, her image had been featured on Canadian coins for decades, symbolizing continuity, tradition, and the constitutional monarchy system that Canada follows. The portrait reflects a modern-era effigy, showing a more mature and realistic representation compared to earlier designs, and it is surrounded by the Latin inscription that identifies her as queen on the reverse side. The coin continues to feature the iconic maple leaf twig design created by G.E. Kruger Gray. This design had remained unchanged for many years, and by 2011 it had become deeply embedded in Canadian identity. The maple leaf is more than just a symbol, it represents the country's natural heritage, unity, and pride. Even as the penny was approaching its end, this familiar design remained, connecting the final coins to a long and consistent visual history. The coin was produced by the Royal Canadian Mint, an institution known worldwide for its high-quality coin production. In 2011, the mint continued to produce pennies in large numbers, although the discussions about eliminating the coin had already intensified. The cost of producing each penny had risen to a point where it exceeded its face value, making it economically inefficient. Despite this, the coin was still minted to meet circulation needs before the final decision was implemented the following year. Physically, the 2011 penny is different from older copper pennies. Unlike earlier issues that were mostly solid copper, this coin is made of a steel core plated with copper. This change in composition was introduced to reduce production costs. As a result, the coin is lighter than older pennies, weighing about 2.35 grams instead of 2.5 grams, while maintaining the same diameter of 19.05 millimeters. The copper plating gives it the familiar reddish appearance, but over time, if the plating wears off, the underlying steel can sometimes become visible. Another interesting detail is how these coins were produced in different finishes. Most 2011 pennies found today are circulation coins, which were made quickly and show typical marks and wear. However, there are also coins produced for collector sets, often referred to as proof-like or specimen coins. These have sharper details, smoother surfaces, and a more polished appearance, making them more attractive and desirable among collectors. From a historical perspective, the 2011 penny holds a very important place. It is one of the last regularly issued 1-cent coins, before Canada officially decided to stop producing pennies in 2012. This means that the 2011 coin represents the closing phase of over a century of penny production in Canada. For many people, it marks the end of an era when even the smallest unit of currency had a role in everyday transactions. Looking closely at the design details, the quality of the strike becomes important for collectors. On the obverse, the fine lines in the Queen's hair, the clarity of the facial features, and the smoothness of the background fields all indicate how well the coin was struck and preserved. On the reverse, the sharpness of the maple leaves, the visibility of the veins, and the clarity of the lettering all contribute to the coin's overall grade. Coins with crisp, sharp details and minimal marks are considered higher quality and more desirable. The way the coin ages is also a key detail, because it is copper-plated steel. It behaves differently compared to older bronze pennies. While the copper surface can still tone and darken over time, damage to the plating can expose the steel underneath, which may lead to spotting or corrosion if not properly stored. This makes well-preserved examples more valuable, as they retain their original appearance without damage. In terms of collector interest, the 2011 penny is more appealing than many earlier common pennies simply because of its historical timing. It is closely associated with the end of the penny era in Canada, and this gives it a level of significance that goes beyond rarity. While millions were still produced, the fact that it belongs to the final years of issue makes it more meaningful to collectors who want to complete date sets or preserve a piece of Canada's monetary history. There are also minor mint errors that can exist for the 2011 penny, including off-center strikes, die cracks, or slight doubling. While most of these are not extremely rare, they can still attract attention from collectors who specialize in error coins. As always, the more visible and dramatic the error, the more interest and potential value it may have. Overall, the 2011 Canadian 1-cent coin is not just another penny, it is a symbol of transition. It reflects a time when traditional cash systems were beginning to give way to modern payment methods, when economic practicality led to the removal of the smallest denomination, and when a simple coin that had existed for generations quietly reached the end of its journey. For collectors and enthusiasts, it represents both an ending and a legacy, making it one of the most historically meaningful modern Canadian pennies. When the 2011 Canadian 1-cent coin was released, its official face value was 1 cent, 0.01 Canadian dollar, and it was still part of everyday transactions across Canada. At that time, people used it for exact pricing, small purchases, and receiving change. However, even in 2011, The real economic situation had already shifted. The cost of producing each penny was actually higher than its face value, which is one of the main reasons Canada officially stopped minting pennies in 2012. Because of this, the 2011 penny is not just a normal coin, it belongs to the final circulating era, which already gives it more historical importance than many older common pennies. Today, the value of the 2011 penny depends strongly on condition, type, and collector demand. A normal circulated coin used, worn, very common, usually holds a value around 0.0 to 10 cents, meaning it is still very low in monetary terms. Millions were produced, so most coins found in pockets or old collections are not rare and are often sold in bulk, rather than individually. However, when the condition improves, the value starts to rise. Coins that are cleaner, with less wear, and better visual appeal can reach around 0.5 to 1 United States dollar. These are still common, but collectors may keep them for date sets or as part of the final penny years. Now the interesting part begins with uncirculated coins. If a 2011 penny has never been used and still shows strong original red luster with minimal marks, its value can increase to around to 10 United States dollars. These coins are more attractive because they represent preserved condition from the last active years of the penny. For coins in higher grades, especially those professionally graded, such as MS65 or above, the value can rise further to around 10 to 50 United States dollars. And in some strong collector markets, even higher depending on eye appeal and surface quality. The cleaner, sharper, and more visually perfect the coin is, the more desirable it becomes. There is also a special category that adds more value: collector versions such as proof-like or specimen coins issued by the Royal Canadian Mint. These coins were made with extra care, showing sharper details and a more polished finish. Such versions of the 2011 penny can reach around 20 to 100 United States dollars, depending on condition and packaging. The highest potential value comes from error coins. If a 2011 penny has a noticeable mint error such as an off-center strike, double strike, plating error, or major die flaw, its value can increase significantly. Depending on how strong and visible the error is, such coins can sell for around 50 to 300 United States dollars. And in rare, dramatic cases even more. Another important detail is the composition. Unlike older copper pennies, the 2011 coin is made of copper-plated steel. This means if the outer copper layer gets damaged, the steel core can show through, which may reduce value. Well-preserved coins that maintain their original surface without damage are much more desirable. Storage also plays a big role. Coins kept in dry, protected environments maintain their quality better and therefore hold higher value. What truly makes the 2011 penny stand out is not just its price, but its historical position. It represents one of the last circulating 1-cent coins before Canada ended penny production in 2012. Because of this, many collectors see it as a closing chapter coin, even though it is not rare by mintage. Its connection to the end of an era gives it lasting importance. In simple terms, the 2011 Canadian 1-cent coin is usually low in value if it is common and used, but it becomes more valuable with better condition, collector grade quality, or unique mint errors. Its real strength lies in its history, its final year significance, and its potential when found in exceptional condition.